Enterprise Exchange at TSTC Culinary School. So today we're going to be here. I appreciate you guys coming today. Even got the Back Row Baptists way back in the back there. Yeah, okay, thanks for showing up. We're going to get this started today. Greg, you weren't needing, were you needing a computer? Were you needing a computer? Okay, I didn't hook it up, so okay. All right, the company that's sponsoring this is called Venture Call, and what we try to do is we try to encourage and educate and equip entrepreneurs. That's really our basic thing that we try to do. And this is one of the ways that we do this. And so today we're bringing together what we call the recovery community and also the business community, and they all overlap. And I appreciate you guys coming and being able to hear some of the stories and things that are going to be spoken about today. And so hopefully there'll be times for questions and answers. If so, please don't hesitate to ask any of these folks any questions about what's going on with their business or what's going on in their lives. So with that, I'm going to actually ask Dr. Rob Nichols to come up. He's my pastor and been a longtime friend, and he's going to talk a little bit about the whole issue of recovery for some of the folks that maybe that's not a whole lot of enough information for you. So Dr. Rob, if you'll come up.
Awesome. 5 minutes?
Speak closer to the microphone.
5 minutes? 5 minutes. I'm a preacher by trade, so 5 minutes is asking for a miracle. But in the recovery community, we don't believe in miracles. We rely on miracles. Amen. So what is recovery? Recovery is coming to a spiritual awakening when you've had a lifelong problem with a compulsion or an addiction, and that is recovery. And when you have a lifelong compulsion to addictive behavior, you have a whole different set of relationships in your life. My stepbrother came here 5 years ago to recover from a pill addiction, and he'll tell you that the most successful relationship up until that point that he'd ever had was with his parole officer. So you have a whole different set of obstacles when you're coming from a recovery community. Most of those obstacles are inflicted by your addiction, and so when people are starting over, they're often starting over from subterranean levels, not the ground up. We have a tendency to burrow when we're in our addiction, so the ground is not near low enough for most of us. It's not until you get into deep archaeology that we start to realize we might have a problem. But in conclusion, that's the most beautiful words a preacher ever said. In conclusion, that's one. In conclusion, I think it's important to understand when we're talking about recovery community, what we're talking about is people. And what I've found in my life is that sometimes socially appropriate people, societal people, can be sicker than people in recovery because they didn't have the chemicals to do the crazy stuff they did. They just did it. And so when you're talking about people in recovery, it's important to understand you're talking about people, just like everybody else you know. They have two things I'll tell you about people in recovery. They have the coolest stories you've ever heard in your life because they do things nobody else would do. Okay? So we don't have testimony night anymore because a guy told about how he woke up in a morgue one day, and that's an entirely different. It was the funniest thing I'd ever heard in my life. Church was over when he talked about waking up in the morgue in Florida, walking around looking for his clothes and running into the corner and giving that young man a heart attack. And the second thing is that people in recovery tend to be fiercely loyal if given a chance to be so. So, is that what you wanted? Okay, so I pastor Church on the Rock, and this year we're going into our 20th year, and we're made up primarily of people in recovery. And we didn't start out that way. People ask me, how do you get into recovery ministry? And for me, it was I found a chronic relapser, and he stumbled into my church one day, and I did what I could for him, and then he brought his friends. Sadly, he's still not sober, but many of his friends are. And so that's how it happened. And 2 years into this, I figured out that I was kind of okay at recovery ministry. I'm used to people asking weird questions because I'm weird. And so in normal church, I'd respond to things honestly, and people would look at me weird. In my church, I respond to things honestly, and people go, cool, and move on. So when that guy stumbled into my church, I found my people, and or my people found me. I'm not sure who was more lost at that point, me or him. But it's been 20 years, and we've seen some really awesome things, and we've seen some things that are really not awesome. But at the end of the day, we don't win very often, but when we win big. So there you go.
I just want to say a few words about, our theme. We call it On the Road of Recovery to Prosperity because the thing about recovery is that we're all in recovery in one way or another. All of us have made bad decisions. All of us have said things we shouldn't have said. All of us have regrets and so forth. And so there's always a recovery process that takes place in that. It's just that a lot of times the recovery community is known for its reliance on chemical addictions or something like that. But what we wanted to try to get across today is that there is a prosperity to be had and the people that are sitting here, they're going to be talking to you today, they'll definitely tell you, that they've had their ups and downs, and they'll probably be pretty candid with you about some of them have been and are currently in their own recovery, but they have built things and they've persevered, okay? So a lot of the message of the stories that you'll hear today really has to do with hope and the development of hope and how they went about doing such things, okay? The thing I do want to get across in terms of setting expectations about the issue of prosperity is that we are not necessarily talking about money, okay? Prosperity is a much bigger issue than just money. And I think if you listen closely to these folks, what you're going to hear a lot of is the issue of relationships. And a lot of these people, even with their businesses that they have going on, and some are new at business, some have been out there for a long time, but they're all going to be talking somewhere along the line about relationships because they realized they could not do this on their own, okay? Many of them may even talk about their relationship with their Creator, okay? And how that faith base has provided them with a foundation from which to springboard into things with the confidence that they need to have. So just keep in mind when they talk about prosperity, you may equate some of that with money, and money's part of it, but it's not the whole picture of what prosperity is about. So with that, I'd like to ask our first guest speaker to come up, Mr. Rick Landers, and he's with Abilene Constructor and Tile. Thank you, brother. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rick Landers, and I love what Pastor said. And a couple things that I'd like to hit on is I believe I was one of those guys' friends that showed up at his church. I thought he was going to turn us all away then, you know, but he didn't, and everything. And that brings back a lot of memories, too. And also the spiritual experience or the spiritual awakening that he talked about, that's exactly I can say what happened to me. I can tell you that happened to me on my 35th day of recovery at the 180 house. And I don't know that if Tracy's ever heard me tell this story, but it's the closest to the truth as I know it today. But things were going so good for me that first 35 days into recovery. I'd had more in 35 days than I'd had probably in 20-something years. And I really didn't have a whole lot. I was living at a halfway house, you know. But God seemed fit to give me a vehicle. He gave me a job that I never looked for. He put some people in my life that I never asked to be my friends. And, you know, so all that happened in the first 35 days, and I'm thinking things are going pretty good. But I'm still looking for a way out. I'm getting out of Abilene. And I'm leaving this 180 house because, excuse my language, that place sucked, okay? And that was my attitude until that 35th day. And what happened on that 35th day was I'd gotten home from work, and Richard said I had a letter, and I hadn't had a letter since I was a kid. I mean, literally hadn't had a letter. You know, where my family is, I don't know. Where I'm at, they don't know. That's what addiction did for me. It took me away from my family at a very young age, and I never looked back. And so as far as they were concerned or knew, I was probably dead. And as far as I knew, they might have been dead. I hadn't spoke or reached out to my family in 20-something years. But I got that letter, and what that letter was is it was a letter that I had written to the 180 house. While I was in prison, and I was looking for a place to stay, and I'd burned up all my friends and relatives through the years of addiction, and so I would go to halfway houses through my process of getting in and out of prison multiple times, and I'd usually stay just a few days and I'd leave at the halfway houses, and then they put a blue warrant out on me, and of course it was just a circle. It was just a vicious circle that I followed for 20 years, or 20-something years. But that's the same thing I was doing here. I was still going to fall in that circle because I did not jump out of prison going, I want my life to be different. That's not what happened. But what did happen is Richard gave me that letter, and I got back to my room, and it was a letter that I'd written to the 180 house asking if I could parole there, and it had all my parole papers that I guess Richard or Tracy was supposed to answer and send off to the state of Texas, and I would go to this halfway house if they would accept me. And so I didn't pay it no attention. I went and took a shower. And I thought, man, that's that letter I wrote them. And it was in a return envelope and everything. I got out of the shower. Good thing my roommate wasn't home at the time, but I got back and I thought, man, there's that letter, and it kept coming back to me. And so I thought, let me just open this letter, and opened up the letter, and from what I understand, Tracy is the one that stamped denied on it. Denied. And so So I remember I could not stand up. I was on my knees. I was crying. I couldn't get on my knees. I was on my belly. I was crying. I don't know if that lasted 10 seconds or if that lasted 10 minutes, but I could not get up. But when I was able to get up, whether it been 10 seconds or 10 minutes, I don't know, I was bawling like a little baby. And I was able to get up, and I realized that all those things those people were saying to me, that first 35 days of getting the vehicle, getting the job, getting a driver's license, getting insurance, getting all those things that people said, man, God's really doing wonders in your life, was not coincidences. And that's what I was calling them. I was calling them coincidences. But when I was able to stand up, it hit me. And I remember standing up in my room, minding my own business, and threw my hands in the air, and I said, God, if you can do this much for me in 35 days, you can have it. That was just the beginning. It was the beginning. So once that happened, my life changed. I got involved in my recovery. I got a sponsor. I started working steps. I started learning some things about myself. I learned out a lot of stuff that I needed to change, a whole lot of stuff. And I've been blessed to have the same sponsor for 17 years. And so we started working on those things. I did not set out for a plan that one day I'm going to own a business. That's not my plan. It wasn't my plan. I didn't work pretty much my whole life because I was in my addiction. I didn't work. There are some people that go to work Monday through Friday and they get a paycheck and they use and they drink or whatever. I'm not one of those people. I don't understand those people. How do you go to work and use? So I did not work. Very little did I work. I know today that, by just my experiences that, that all of us are given talents, in life, God-given talents. What I have today is just that. It's talents. Where I learned to do construction, I don't know. I can't tell you. I don't know. I just know that once I started the road to recovery, if you showed me something, I could fix it. I had no experience in laying tile or framing houses or painting, or I didn't have any experience in anything except for just using and drinking and disobeying the law. And I was real good at getting thrown in prison, and I was real good at getting out, and so, but I know that that's a talent that God gave me. And so one thing I know that I've done since that point up till today is I'm the first one to work and I'm the last one to leave. That's never changed. It's never changed. I made $7 an hour when I was at the 180 house. I did not rely on somebody from the 180 house to give me a ride. I took the bus. The bus came at 6:05. I had to be at work at 8. Or it'd come closer to 7 and I could get to work close to 8. Or I could be sitting on that person's front doorstep at 6:45. And I worked with a guy in construction. And most of the houses we did were, he flipped houses and worked on houses. And so I'd go sit on the front porch at 6:45. And if they wasn't there, I'd start to work. He didn't start paying me till 8 o'clock. But I worked. 6:45, I start to work. And I didn't ask him to pay me. That was my choice. I did that. They would leave at a certain time. Sometimes I'd stay after and work. I didn't ask him to pay me. He said work time stopped at 4. That's what time work time stopped. I wanted to work, and so that's what I did. I was the first one to work and I was the last one to leave. Today, I do run a pretty successful business. I employ about 18 people in the field and use different subcontractors in the community. I love helping out new businesses. that's what people did for me inside the rooms. Once they learned that I could do some things and I went out on my own, people inside the rooms, in recovery rooms, gave me an opportunity and said, hey, I need my house painted. Hey, I need my bathroom remodeled. And so they did for me, and I think it's just for me just to pass on too. So when a new business starts up in town, and I think they've got a good heart and they're headed in the right direction, I want to do the same for them. And, you know, life is definitely different today. I have made a lot of mistakes in business. We were sitting down a while ago talking about business, and Tracy pointed off, "Y'all pay your taxes." You better pay your taxes. I said, yeah, I learned that my first year. Okay. I did. I learned that my first year because, you know, that was a scary moment. That was a very, very scary moment. And it didn't start out at $72,000. It started out at about 50, and I panicked and did absolutely nothing, you know, until it got to 72,000, and I really thought I was going to jail, and my life was over. And, you know, God, again, put someone in front of me that I'd met inside the business world, and that I was telling him my story. He just laughed, and he's a multimillionaire, you know, owns all kinds of stuff. And I said, it ain't funny. He says, it is funny. He said, everybody that's ever been in business has had trouble with the IRS sooner or later. Me too. He goes, how much you owe? I said, $72,000. He says, can you pay this back? I said, I don't know. And he gave it to me. And it took me 5 years to pay that guy, but I paid him back and everything. But I haven't made that mistake again. Okay, so we do learn the hard way. I'm still learning the hard way, you know. And so, but like I said earlier, I didn't come in looking to start a business or something. It's something that just fell into my lap, and that's really a longer story, which we don't have time for. But I did work for this guy for a couple of years. Some things were happening within outside his organization, this particular company, and a few people in here know about those things. But he come in the office one day after I've been working for a couple of years, and he said, you know, Rick, I'm fixing to shut my doors. I need you to be the first to know, because I was working in the office with him and running jobs for him and everything, and I want you to be the first to know. And I said, well, I appreciate it. You know, I won't have a problem finding a job. I can go work anywhere in this town. You know, I'd been here just a few years. I'd probably been here about 3, maybe 4 years at that time. And I felt like I could go to work anywhere in this town. I thought my reputation was pretty good. And if I went to somebody's business, they would hire me. There was no doubt about that. You know, they would hire me. I felt like I had that kind of reputation, that I'd built that within myself as being a good man with a good heart that's going to give you everything he's got. And I said, okay, well, that's not a problem. He said, or you can buy me out. And at that time, I was only making $17 an hour, and I can't buy this company. There's no way. Again, God put somebody in front of me, you know, that he suggested. And I said, I'm not going to ask that guy. That's a customer of yours, you know. And I said, he said, you're not going to ask him? I said, no, I won't. But we'd gotten together and came up with some little form of contract with that guy's office. And he told the guy what I wanted, and it was a chunk of change. And the guy said, Rick, are you going to be able to pay me back? And I said, I don't know. I've never done nothing like this in my life. I never have. You know, up to that point, maybe I'd done a couple little side jobs around town, using a hand or two and helping somebody else. But I'd never done nothing like this. He goes, you don't know if you can pay me back? I said, I don't know. But I do know this. There's not a man in Abilene that outworked me, because these people's work ethic in Abilene sucks. And I still believe that today. There's not a man in Abilene that outworked me. I mean, some people get tired working 7/12s. Why? How come you get tired? I don't get tired. You know, I get tired once or twice a year. God has blessed me with ADD. I have an abundance of energy, okay? And I just do not get tired. You know, it only happens once or twice a year, but when it does happen, I need a little time off, recoup. I'm good to go for another 6 or 8 months. Most guys, you work 7/12s, and they need a couple days off. I mean, just a bunch of sissies to me, you know? And it's just, that's just the way that I am. And that's what I told him. And he says, you know, I believe that. And he picked the phone up and he says, Rick, go down there and pick up 2 cashier checks. And he goes, we'll talk about this later. And I said, okay. And the guy that helped me out with my taxes, that's the same guy. He gave me that chunk and gave me the $72,000, and I paid both of them back within 5 years. You know, and you know, today life is very, very good. It's very different. We still have problems, and I know that I always ask my mentors and my sponsor for suggestions. Still today, I still ask for help. I mean, I've got to stay in touch with those guys. Those guys got me to where I'm at, you know, and so I just want to just keep doing the same thing. That's what my sponsor tells me. Rick, just keep doing what you're doing. Just keep doing what you're doing. So I've been calling him, and I've been listening to his suggestions and working with him, and I just keep doing that. And so, you know, I'm very glad to be a part of this, and I'm glad to see some newer faces around here and some, you know, newer businesses, and see some of the older faces that I haven't seen in a while. That brings back a lot of memories, good memories. And the 180 house does not suck. It's a good place. It really is. You just got to take advantage of what they got. You know, I love the 180 house, you know, and I lean a lot on prayer. Some people say in recovery they've done nothing perfect, but not drink or use. I think I've done two things perfect since that 35 days, is I haven't drank, I haven't used, and I've never missed a prayer in the morning. Never. That does not happen. I've done that perfectly, you know, and so that's kind of the way I start my day right there, is with prayer and just ask God to direct me, and He always does. You know, He leads me down some weird roads sometimes, but anybody that knows me knows that I think God is weird. He's been weird for me for 17 years. He's still weird, you know. He just does things, and I don't know why. You know, He just does things, and but I love what I do. I do not have a problem getting up in the morning, going to work. I love talking to people. I love the community of Abilene. They have helped me and my family so much. And, you know, I love this city. That's all I have. Thank you.
Stay right here just a second. Okay, we got 3 minutes for any kind of questions. Does anybody have a question for Rick? Wow, you must have told the whole story really well.
17 minutes. That's a record, man.
That is. Okay, thank you, Rick.
17.
Go ahead. All right. Next one up, we're going to ask Chris Kaufman to come on up. And Chris owns Metro High Rail, Crane, and Magnet. If you don't know what that is, he's about to tell you. So come on up, Chris.
Man, y'all make me nervous. Yeah, I'm Chris, and yes, I am a recovering addict. And just to kind of give you a little example of that, I had some sort of addictive personality as long as I can remember. I remember my mother when I was too little to get to the cookie jar, me using chairs and tables and whatever I could to get to that cookie jar, and her catching me in it. She never told me, Chris, don't get in the cookie jar. She said, don't let me catch you in the cookie jar. Right? Well, where I come from, I never once thought about not getting in the cookie jar. I thought about not getting caught. And I think sometimes that kind of just sums up where addicts come from. I know that's where I come from. You know, I don't know. I've had that entrepreneurial spirit as long as I can remember. My grandfathers owned bait stores to grocery stores, bars, cafes. And I grew up in that environment of we don't work for other people. You know, my family's always kind of took care of themselves. And so it was kind of strange when my mom went to college and got a degree and went to work for the state. But it was like, that's not what we do, you know. And so, but through that process, I've always had that spirit of wanting to do something. I mean, me and my brother used to get up in the middle of the night and make taffy and sell it at school, or rock candies and different stuff. I mean, I've been doing something like that since I was in junior high school. Mowing lawns, whatever we could do. And I still had a side job. I started stocking groceries at a little convenience store when I was 12. You know, people look at me like I'm crazy when I tell them I bought my first car when I was 14 and it paid for my first house by the time I was 19. And you're an addict? Yes. Now, when I tell you that, it wasn't a lot. It was a first house, it was a trailer house, but it was mine. And so I've always had that ambition, that willingness to do something. Anybody that knows me, I click with Rick as well as anybody because I'm the same way. I work every day. I work 12, 14 hours a day, every day. And when other people don't do that, I don't necessarily understand it. You know, Richard tells me all the time, you need to take a break, buddy. You need to take a break. You need to take a break. I don't even know how to do that. You know, I don't know. When I got to Abilene, I came here and went through a treatment center. I figured out real quick that I probably ought to stay here. I realized that there was a recovery community here, and those were my people. I've been looking for them all of my life, and I found them right here in Abilene. And somebody talked about going to the 180. That was this is where you are to go. Some of my friends from the treatment center said, we're going over there. So I followed them over there. And, I've learned a lot of valuable lessons about how much I really don't like people. About how to get along with people. And I learned a lot of that in communal living. Oh, it was tough. But that's where I started my first business in recovery. Wasn't much, just a little paint and drywall company with another recovering addict that didn't know how to pay his child support, and he went to jail. Before long, I rolled in another partner that was in recovery, and he decided to go out and use and steal from the company, and it bankrupted me. And I've actually made some poor decisions like that a few times with businesses. And then I went to work for some other successful companies and learned how to do some stuff differently. And when me and Patrick decided that we were going to start Metro High Rail Crane and Magnet, I did the first thing I do with any major decision in my life. I talked to my sponsor. And the first thing he said is, here, this is Mike. Mike, where's phone number? You need to get to know this guy. Matter of fact, there was a training out at West Texas Council of Governments that he paid for me to go. He said, here, go. You need this training. And, what I've learned over the years is I'm not that great of a business guy. I'm really not. I wasn't that good at school. Accounting, it'll equal out at one point, That's just not who I am. And it's been some of the hardest decisions in recovery that I've had to make is saying, hey, look, this is not my skill set. That's your skill set. Why don't you do that? Because I come from a place where I think I should be able to solve every problem. And I don't really know where that originated from, but that's where I come from. I should be able to solve every problem that's going on in my life. And what recovery has taught me is that I can't. Is that I need suggestions from other people, It really does my heart good to be here today and to be part of a successful company that's doing well. And like Mike said, if you don't know what Metro High Rail Crane and Magnet is most of you probably don't even know what a high rail is. But if you've ever seen a pickup truck go down the railroad tracks, that is a high rail. And I do those federal inspections. And then I do OSHA inspections on their cranes and other equipment. And I keep that equipment maintained and up and running for them. You know, this, to me, it's still amazing. It still amazes me every day that I get to do this. You know, so, some people, oh, you're lucky you get to be your own boss. I said, yeah, but you don't know my boss. My boss is a dick. And that is, I mean, that's the only way I know how to put it, because I am. I'm harder on myself than anybody else can be. And one of my guys called me the other day. They were in Fort Hancock working, which is forever out there by El Paso. And they forgot to put one nut on a lock pin. I said, well, when are you going back to put it on? Well, I'm not. I'm going to mail it to him. No, you're not. You're going to drive your butt right back out there and put that nut on that lock pin. And he was like, well, so-and-so will put it on for me. No, that's not what we do. Today, I know my integrity is everything. You know, I've worked hard to build trust with my family, who, when I went to treatment, wouldn't even answer the phone. And that went on for years. It took me 12 years to rebuild relationships with my brother. You know, I don't know. It's a hard thing for me. Because that's what addiction does. It separates you from the people you love the most, care about. And recovery has a way of bringing it back together. If you listen, I've seen thousands of people fail at trying to maintain some sense of recovery, so even just simple sobriety. Recovery for me today is more than just abstinence. It is truly about trying to become that person God intended me to be from the beginning. You know, and you know, I don't really have much else to say, but there is a few thank yous I'd like to put out there. Wouldn't have this business if it wasn't for Richard and Tracy. They've helped me, guided me, done everything they could. Mike's counseled me. But even before then, there's people in this room that I don't even get to see all the time. My really good friend, Dr. Rob Nichols. That sounds weird to call you doctor. I know you are and have been for a long time, but I've called you Bishop forever. Jim Clark, even back there. Sometimes they don't always know what they've done in my life, but you know, they guided me on the walk, which really changed my approach to the God of my understanding. I really thought I was a devout disciple for God. I learned very quickly through that I was slacking a lot. And today, I still fall short. I fall short every day. I'm just a human. I try my best. And one of the biggest things that I do today is try to help other recovering addicts. Whether that be simply with advice, buying them a bus ticket to treatment, to sometimes allowing them to make a little money working for me. And sometimes that is a huge blessing for both people, and sometimes it's not. But the one thing I always know is that God's always got my back in this deal. I've never been up against an obstacle yet that God hasn't presented somebody, just like Rick said, with that solution. And I don't care what it is. We're trying to expand right now. Some of y'all probably know that. We'd started another company several months back called Earl Clayton Holdings. We're slowly trying to get it ramped up to do vacation housing and stuff like that. I've actually found an RV park I'm trying to buy. I'm hoping to know in the next, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, about that. And we're hoping to start moving in that direction. And what I know is if that's what God has in store for me, it will find its way. If that's what He wants me to do, all I have to do is do the legwork. You know, and sometimes I struggle with that as an addict, and this may be a human thing. I don't know. I know as an addict, I operate in fear a lot. That's where my addiction comes from. There's a lot of fear. Because the truth of it is, I'm a scared little boy that'd rather hide in that corner than be up here at this podium. And it's only through God do I find that strength in you people. And but I do know that if I can find the courage to step out there, whatever comes next, if I will take that leap, God always has a way of turning it into a blessing in my life. Anyway, that's all I got.
All right, very good. How we doing time, Pam? We're doing good? Okay, good. Now I'm going to ask Mr. Greg Ayers to come up. He's the managing partner of Nisi's Barber and Cosmetology Schools. And Greg, though he does not come from a recovery background per se, a lot of the things that Greg and his wife do in their barbering school, you can imagine, for those of you that have been in prison, a lot of times people learn how to do hair. Female and males learn to do hair. And so Greg and his wife, they've dealt with a lot of people coming from that background and helping them legitimize those skills so that they can go out and get a job or actually start their own businesses. So with that, Greg, come on up and tell us about Nisi's.
Thank you, Mike. You're a solid person. I like you. Amen. And so I'm here because of I just returned from Florida, so I'm trying to get acclimated back into Abilene. It was extremely hot and humid, but that's my hometown. And so I'm a Floridian at heart, but I had a swim team reunion I had to go to. I was pretty good. But anyway, I like people. I love people. And this is why I put my heart into people. And a lot of the students that come, I've heard some stories that made me just stand still and had to meditate on it once and come back to them to come up with some type of a word of hope to them. And what I found out is that you have to have the mindset of constancy of purpose. And so one person came to me and said, well, Mr. Greg is what they called me. They said, Mr. Greg, I've never had any discipline in my life. I said, well, you were disciplined when you was using or whatever it is that you were doing. And they said, I had not thought about that. And so now what I do is I'm working toward life skills, teaching them, that this may sound weird, but teaching them how to obey, teaching them how to respect themselves. You know, when you go to this grocery store, a canned good may say $1.99. They're not going to change the value of that canned good because you ask them to change it. And that's the same thing with a human. You must assign a value to yourself and then live up to the value of who you are as a person. And I tell people there's 4 parts to a human being. Who we are spiritually, that's block number 1. That's where every human should start. And then who we are socially, that's who we associate with. And then who we are contractually in keeping our words and things. And then who we are desirably. Now, when you start trying to go in opposite direction, it takes 2 people to change their mind to come back and start over again. And so we find ourselves with a lot of conflict. Now, let me say this, and this is what a constant thing that I tell them, is that you can't change a challenge, but you can change a problem. In other words, I was born in January 1961, and my father had a boy, and he had 3 girls, and he said he was going to have another boy if it killed him. Greg came. Well, I was born in January. In March, he left. He died. And so now, everyone has always, this is how I get into this entrepreneur thing. They have told me how great a man he was being an electrician. He even had a nightclub. My mom had 5 brothers. They was musicians and they were singers. He was not, but what he did was he put the saxophone cord around his neck and he walked around the club as though he was one of the band members. It's a mindset is where I'm leading you guys. He even had a little speakeasy back there where you had a special knock or whatever, and you open up and anyway. But so now my goal is to maintain a constancy of purpose of success, not for myself, but on the shoulders that I'm standing on, and my uncles, etc., Fortune 500 CEOs, lawyers, doctors, all these type things, and now for the next generations. And so I asked you this question. How many of you remember your grandparents? It's not a trick question. You can raise your hand. What about great-grandparents? 3 times. Well, they say that you remember the ones that left you something. And so those that say, well, they remember grandparents because they left you something. If it was nothing but a good smile, they left you something that you can hold on to. And so I tell the young people, the men, the women, the boys, and the girls today that we must leave something. We're not living, Greg is not living just for, well, I'm still in Nieces, believe it or not, because these are my daily conversations with the people. I think my job is to walk through there, and when I'm not doing a little paperwork, but just to motivate and bring clarity to the lives. But we have to live our lives to where we will bring something to our next 7 generations. So this is why I do the things that I do. I was the guy in the neighborhood. My mom made tea cakes about this big. I would break off a piece and I would tell them a penny. Well, a penny had value back and they would give me the penny. By the time I was over, I would sell half and keep half. And then I started realizing from a little boy, I was like, wait, I think I have a special gift here somehow. And then we had a lot of pine trees. So when all the pine straw fell, one lady said, will you please rake my pine leaves? I said, yes, ma'am. I'm a little boy, 8, 9, 10. I raked the leaves, but then 3 blocks over, they didn't have pine trees. And I would go over there with my wagon with bags of straw, and they would pay me to put the same straw I got paid to pick up over their flowers. And I would walk home, I says, man, I am somebody. As a little boy. And then from that, I went on to selling timber because I had to figure, I was a military man. I did 26 years active duty and 11 years federal. And so I had to figure out, now this is my goal I heard y'all talk about money briefly, and I do the same thing with everyone. Mr. Meredith, he looked like Slim Pickens. I lived beside him. I bought land from him, and he would always give me, every day he gave me a lesson. He says, don't look like you have, because then people won't ask you for it. And then he always had a plaid shirt on. And I told my wife, I said, I'm going to buy Mr. Meredith some plaid shirts. Until I saw on the back of his line, he had about 12 or 15, and they were all the same color. And I said, well, and then we continue to go on. But I've always had great mentors. So all I'm doing is just sharing what was poured into me. And what was poured into me was a loving heart and a kind, in other words, when people know the intent of your heart, they will come to you and they will talk to you. And so if I can't pick up from you that you have the intentions of your heart are good, then I'm going to watch you from a distance. Kind of like the little old man that taught me how to buy cows. See, I was sitting there in the sun, he was sitting in the back corner, and then I saw this little figure sitting up there, but he was watching me to see if I was affable, if I was approachable. And finally he said, hey, I worked in the delivery stable. And I'm sweating hard. I said, delivery stable? Now he says, yeah, they had horses when he was in. But anyway, he started telling me things. And so I'm saying to you that you say you're recovering, and we all are recovering from something. But listen, you can change a what? Y'all didn't follow me earlier. But you can't change but what you can do with a challenge is change your attitude toward the challenge so that you meet the challenge with all of your faculties intact and you're ready for the task. Well, maybe you will and maybe you won't overcome the challenge, but guess what will happen while you're dealing with that challenge? You will learn something about yourself that you didn't know before. And so now the light will shine a little brighter. And then not only that, when things start wiggling and moving, and someone from a distance will see, and they will come and give you the right word at the right time that will enable you to be able to stand strong and move forward. You know, when we opened, my wife opened her, I'm just hitting on some things. We done a lot of things. But when she had a salon, she would sit in the chair and spin around. She didn't have any clients. But she was open on time, and she closed on time. She was open on time, and she closed on time. And finally, people kept coming and coming, and then we opened the beauty supply store. And then when we went down to the port to buy, in little old Abilene, they said, do not sell to the heirs, because that's my #1 competitor in Abilene. Well, my name is Ayers. My grandfather was an Irishman. We have the name Ayers. And so I said, well, they don't know who I am if they just see Greg Ayers. Y'all follow me with that one? I don't look like an Irishman, do I? On paper, I was. And then they started selling to me. Then when they saw the volume of what we were spending from them, guess what they did? We drove to the port. We stand there, and I said, Greg and Joyce Ayers, nieces. And they looked, and they said, whoa. And he said, I apologize, because we was told not to sell to you all. We wasn't Asian. And so he said, but you know what? You guys have sold such a large volume that I think we're going to, and then we continue to do so. And so now the school, we're opening, we combine, thanks to legislation, we can have schools in one building. So now we're over here on industrial. Now we're in Austin, and we plan to continue on. But now we're getting ready to start doing other things outside of the beauty industry, so that we can diversify ourselves, because, you know, with the pest, politics and society and technology and so forth can affect your business. So we want to make sure that we have a broad spectrum. But I want to say this, that, hold on, let me make sure I get it right so I can get out of your way. I live my life to make my family proud. Even if it caused me pain. I live my life to make my family proud. I live my life to where I can introduce my culture to other cultures and other people in a positive way. I live my life so that I can introduce my culture to other folk in a positive way, so that I can introduce my culture and my family to the world. If I keep that in mind, my constancy and purpose of looking out for generations to come will stand the test of time and all of the things that will come and try to derail it. And I'm not in a derailing business unless it is sin. I want life and more of it. And I want to say that change yourself, but not your environment, and your growth will be slow and difficult. If you change yourself and not your environment, your growth will be slow and difficult. If you change your environment but not yourself, your growth will be slow and less difficult. Change your environment and yourself, growth will be faster and more successful. And I'm going to end it with this. Ms. Bobby Thompson, she made me her executive secretary. And I told her I was going into the military. And she said, why are you doing that? I have you on an executive track for the state. I said, ma'am, with all due respect, I don't want to be a secretary. I want to have a secretary. So you continue. Are y'all with me? So keep reaching. And you can talk about your past, but don't dwell on it too long, or you may fall back in that same hole. Keep marching, keep walking, keep building alliances, keep talking with people, keep associating, because God is a multiplier and the enemy of God is a divider. And if I'm in a room of folk and they always talking about division too long, what I do is I ease out, because I don't want that to be a part of my mindset. I want to keep my mindset positive, and I want to keep walking forward. Any questions? Thank you.
Okay, we're approaching about the halfway mark here, and this is always generally a good time to give announcements because nobody's left yet. Okay, so just to mention for Venture Call, we get together every Monday at a different location, every Monday, except the second Monday of every month, and we're here at Potter's Pizza. So it's open to the public. Just come. Now, on the second Monday of every month, we have guest speakers, such as what you've seen here, but we still only have, it's generally just a 1 hour time frame. Okay, but every other Monday, we meet somewhere at a different restaurant around town. You can go to the website, venturecall.com, and I've got it posted on there what restaurant we're meeting at, and it's always from 12 to 1. The other thing is that our friends from McMurray, and Paul's back in the corner back there, he's dean of the business school back there. One of his professors is doing a project where they are offering to redesign company logos for free. So if you are in need of having your company logo redesigned, or maybe you don't have a company logo, this class is willing to do that for you free. So Paul, do you have any other comments about that? Speak real loud.
Yeah, it's our contemporary business class. They're mostly freshmen, few upperclassmen, and it's a class project. Every year they have different kind of class projects. Dr. Pagula came up with for this year. It's a great learning experience for the kids. It provides you with the opportunity to get some fresh ideas from teenagers. That's why, for example, McMurray also sponsors a media contest in the local high schools, because we want to get feedback from our potential future students. Well, this is the same kind of thing that could work for you, to get to meet these young people and get the ideas that motivate them and people of their age as they may relate to your business. So
Okay.
if you're interested, Mike has some flyers about it,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll be more than happy to entertain any questions and if anybody has any.
So I'll pass these flyers around. If you're not interested, just pass it on. We probably don't have enough flyers for everybody, but if you think you're interested, here's the details for that. And it's got Dr. Toby Papula's contact information on it. So I'm going to pass those around, and if you're not interested, that's totally fine. But if you are, or you think you are, or you want to investigate it, just take one of these flyers, okay? The next second Monday event, which is September 9th, I'm pretty sure that our guest speaker is going to be Senior Airman Jason Spatero from the Comm Squadron out at the base. And what he's going to be talking about, this guy is a whiz, let me tell you. He does cybersecurity stuff and all that kind of thing. But he's going to be talking to us and about protections for small businesses and protecting your information, your digital information, and all of that kind of stuff. I can't even put it in the right words, but so that's going to be September 9th. It'll be here in this room from 12 to 1, so you might want to keep that in mind. At this point, I think we are ready for our panel, so if the folks will come on up, and my friend and moderator for this section is Mr. Ron Davis, and he's going to introduce you to them. And come on up.
Thank you. I'll let you guys get settled. You know, Mr. Gregg, when I was listening to you, I kept being reminded when you talked about the problem and the challenge of a quote that it's been like my email signature for years now, and it's like, don't ask for it to be easier, ask for you to be better. And that just kept coming to me. So while they're sitting down, I thought I'd share that. And get this up where maybe it's actually recording my voice. So you guys microphones all working over there?
Test.
All right.
Test.
Looks
yeah.
good.
Speak loud.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes. So what I'm going to do is let you guys introduce yourselves. So if you just go around and tell us a little about, introduce yourselves personally, your business, and kind of how long you've been doing it.
My name's Eric Winterstrom. I have Kingdom Electric and Texas Oil Electric. Started Kingdom Electric 3 years ago, and then purchased Texas Oil Electric 2 years ago. This is my wife, Lynn.
I'm the wife. I'm Lynn.
You guys can move the microphones closer to you. They are not bolted to the tables. There you go.
My name is Tracy Kennedy. I'm Richard Kennedy's wife. I'm the office manager of the 180 house. I was originally the cleaner, the laundry person, and the bookkeeper, and everything till we hired employees. You can tell them about everything.
I'm Richard Kennedy. I'm director at the 180 House that been doing this for 25 years, helping people early in recovery get their lives started back. We also have Kennedy Rentals. We have, it's one of my passions is fixing old houses, so it's worked out real well. She's very modest. She really runs all the business side of both 180 House and Kennedy Rentals. I go out and have the fun and do pretty much what I want to do. So.
I'm Ruben Martinez. This is my wife, Anna Martinez, and we are owners of Jumps and Tents for Events. And we've been doing this we owned the business since October of last year.
Yeah.
And anything else to say?
And we've been doing business together for about 5 years since we got married. Our anniversary is in October, so.
Well, congratulations. Yeah. All right, so amazingly, I have right in my notes we have 35 minutes, but everybody else finished early. I don't think I've ever been in a program where the people ahead of me finished early. So we have a little more time to answer some questions. And we've had, some people talk about the recovery side, and now something that Mike really wanted us to do is talk about it from the business employer side. All members of this panel have employed people in recovery and have learned from that experience, and so we're going to try and learn a little bit from them. What I did want to start with was asking you guys why you employ and work with people in recovery, and was that something you did intentionally, or was it something that just kind of organically happened as you were hiring?
We intentionally hire people in recovery. I feel as though we all fall short in many ways, and lots of times people who are in recovery don't get that chance. Mm-hmm. And the Lord has given me plenty of chances, so I feel as though it's our duty to do the same.
I think it's come as a byproduct of our business and all. It helps sometimes to know one if you are one. So, and I agree wholeheartedly. What I wrote down about this is, number one, they tend to be very hard workers. You've heard this from a couple of presenters. Pastor Rob touched on the point that they tend to be very loyal. And those are aspects. I try to, when I get ready for people to go out looking for jobs, I remind them, people tell me they're looking for three things: work hard, be there every day, and don't steal from your employer. And people with companies tell me it's, that's their hardest deal, is finding people, good employees on a consistent basis. It's the biggest obstacle to growing their business. And, number one, these people are already involved in a program that requires rigorous honesty on a daily basis. If not, it becomes evident pretty quickly.
Yeah. So the question was, why do you employ people in recovery? I guess like because they're people, you know, like that's like the biggest thing to me. I think everybody at some point has dealt with drugs in some way and it's affected them in some way. I know somebody, I've been there. I was a crazy teenager. If you just see them as people, it's not really I think it came organically to us, though, being involved in the community of Abilene, Texas. It's one of those things where we were actually approached at a fair, a job fair, and I think it's definitely important when we do meet people that are ready to work that have come from an addiction. What part in their recovery they are. I mean, if they're ready to work and they're ready to do, you know, go somewhere further in their life and stay away from what, you know, they came from, I definitely believe in those chances. And I'm not going to hire you if you come and you smell like alcohol and you look high, you know. You're not going to get the job for me. So I definitely think that that's one of our biggest things, where if you're ready to recover and move forward, and I think it will happen organically for us. We're not out there promoting, you know, we hire felons or anything like that, but I think it's Abilene. I think there's a long way to go to recover this whole community together. So we want to be a part of that.
Okay. And you kind of just segued into the second question for us, which was, what advice would you give people who are in recovery and are looking for those jobs and looking for those work? I know Richard touched on it a little as well. But this is your chance to talk to people in that community and tell them what you're thinking as an employer when they come and apply for a job with you, or want to apply, or even are considering it. And I think a lot of times people will be afraid to even ask. Exactly. So since you guys started it, you can start it coming back this way.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, if you're going to come apply, you need to be sober. That's a first. I feel like the biggest thing when I'm looking at hiring someone, regardless of whether they're in the recovery community or not, is finding your value and what you bring to the table and lead with that. So when you come and ask me for a job, I want to know what you can do and what you're good at, so I can find a place for you in my team. Until you can do that, it's hard to go out there and say, well, I just need money. And I think that when you do that, it really does make an employer want to say, I need them on my team because I don't have that, you know, and if I do, I could use more of it, you know. Right. I think assuming responsibility for your past actions. I don't really necessarily carry a paper application saying, you know, have you ever been to prison or anything like that. But that question comes up organically at some point. They either mention it, I either mention it. But I think, like, accepting that you have your weaknesses is the first step. The next step after that is to say, what are you doing about it? So, like, that's what I want to know more than what your weaknesses are.
Okay. For people going out generally, we have a small employee base. But what I look for, and Richard will discuss what he feels, is selling yourself. Sell your, kind of like what she was saying, you go out and give your assets. Also admit that, you know, you're willing to learn and do the best that you can. I also think first impressions are very, very important. So if they're dressed in a crop top and shorts, I'm going to think twice, other than them coming in with a blouse and, you know, some slacks, you know. I think first impressions are really hard to get over. Doesn't mean that, when people are looking for jobs at the 180, it's like remove the piercings from your face, and I'm sorry, just being honest. And you might be able to wear them later on when you get hired, but to go out and to get a job, look respectable, look like you belong in society. I know that as being an addict, when I first got here, I didn't feel like I was good enough, but I had to sell myself, that I could do that job, and I was willing to learn whatever they needed me to learn. And I think that's very, very important. Richard has a couple other things.
In answering this question, said present yourself well, stay focused, and find a balance of recovery, family, and work. That's something that's hard. We're people of extremes, and we have a hard time doing that sometimes, or all the time, I suppose. We're very capable of becoming workaholics, changing one addiction to another, and letting those other areas of our life suffer. Sooner or later, that blows back in all areas of our lives up. I got to tell this story real quickly. My second job in recovery, when I finally managed to break back into the trucking industry, was managing the trucking terminal here in Abilene. And after I went down and got the job, found out that our number one contract was delivering pharmaceuticals all over West Texas. It's what they tried to arrest me for before. But I didn't day one tell them I'm a recovering addict, and I didn't tell them that the other 7 guys I put to work for me were all in recovery. But in 7 years of doing that, we never had a missing drug. We got where we were supposed to go and got there on time and did a very good job for that company. So it taught me that we can accomplish anything that we want and need to accomplish. But, I heard somebody say earlier, I believe Mr. Eric, about putting some of our past behind us and letting go of those things. Society is willing to forget where you've been if you're willing to forget where you've been. And the set of principles that work for us out on the streets and work for us inside institutions, if we keep applying them outside, they only put us back in those institutions. Thank you.
I don't have that sheet. I'd like to reread the question.
The question was, what advice would you give someone looking who's in the recovery community?
Okay.
When they're looking for a position with you guys?
The biggest advice I could give is just, like everyone else has said, show up looking the part. I mean, if you're coming to apply for us, it's more than likely as an electrical apprentice or an electrician. And, you need work boots, you need jeans. Don't go showing up in shorts and flip-flops, because chances are I'm not going to hire you. It's just... in general, just look the part. I feel as though everybody here's pretty much touched on.
And so what do you look, is there anything that you do during the process that...
Well, when I hire someone, I give them a test. It's a written test, and everybody gets the same test. So there's lots of times where there's electricians coming out of recovery, and based on that test is how I judge their electrical knowledge. I base things more on what their knowledge is than where they were in their personal lives. We can all get over the things we've done. I need people who can do that job that I'm hiring them for. So we do ask, what their criminal background is, just so, depending on what their background is, we don't necessarily put them in people's houses. I've got a division that does more industrial work, and I'll set people in an industrial application. I try to convince a lot of these guys to not work so much, because I've seen it so many times that when they do fall into the workaholic mode, it's too easy to then fall back into their other addictions.
That's good. I know when you were mentioning removing the things from your face, I remember when I was in paramedic school, all the ambulance services had like rules about tattoos and stuff like that, and they said it's the old lady rule, because you're going to be going into some little old lady's house, and she reacts differently to tattoos than regular people do. And I know that you have that, as Kingdom Electric had you guys out just a couple of weeks ago, and it's like, you know, when your guys show up at the door, I'm judging whether I want to let you in too as a customer. So that's and they're representing your company, so it's important for you to have those rules. Moving to the entrepreneurs in the room who may be hiring or thinking about hiring different people or having people in recovery come for a job, what advice do you give them on maybe how that process works for hiring, how it works when they're working, how you handle problems and that kind of thing? Start down here.
I think in the beginning of most people's recovery situations, when they're getting out of the 180 house, they're actually less apt to fall in that first 6 months, I feel like, because they're actually the best employee that you can have during probably the first 3 to 6 months, because they're going to their PO every week. They've got appointments, they've got to work a program, and they've got to do certain things. So during that time frame, they're the best employee anyone would ever want. After that, you've got to, they're just like anybody else who can, they've all got everybody's different. So advice as far as hiring someone from the community, whether you hire someone off the street or from the community, it's like they were saying before, the people, they're loyal, they're going to work hard, and they want to prove themselves. So they're actually, in a lot of ways, better employees, I've found, than just somebody straight out, just that's not in recovery.
And I'll just say to the employers, you can't be afraid of their past. We've been burned, but we've also had a lot of success stories. And if we were afraid of all of their past, then we would have no success stories. The Lord has gotten us through every burn, everyone that was in recovery but wasn't working a program, and things kind of went downhill. The Lord has gotten us through every single one of those because we've stayed faithful. You can't let that fear set in of, well, what if they fall back? And what if they do the same thing to us that they were charged for back there? Because those success stories, even if it's one, are worth it.
Go ahead.
I guess what really came to mind was pay attention. But that's no different than if you hired anybody off the street. And what we know and what I've heard is that, and I hear that, I've had to make those calls to employers frequently. If I know that somebody's hired one of my residents and they went out and relapsed, I get on the phone and say, hey, you need to be aware of this. 90% of the time that employer says, it can't be, they're my best employee. Maybe so, but you need to be paying attention. Things can change quickly. I've got to say, while I've got the opportunity, Chris, Rick, see, I was going to tell off on Rick. Rick couldn't spell construction when he got here. Now he are one. Seeing Bryant sitting back there, these are the things that, like we're talking about, that make it worthwhile. When people talk about successes, I've got 100% success rate. I learned a long time ago just to count the successes and ignore the failures that you've got to in business.
What was the question?
What counsel would you give to fellow business owners considering hiring someone in recovery?
I think for us it's been a big learning process. We were barely in business, so it was just a learning curve. But what I've seen is some of the guys that the advice I would give them, accountability, that goes a long ways. Some of these guys, we give them the guys that we hired and we got working out there, we give them a task, and what I seen, they do the task. And I seen, for us, like, we look at me and my wife, we go home, I'm like, this is pretty easy, like, this is not too bad, like, why? But anyways, I think accountability goes a long ways to for these guys to spend the responsibility to showing up on time and doing the right thing.
It's definitely one of those things where, like, they were talking on the podium, I'm a workaholic. I work 12-hour shifts 7 days a week, and I go home and I'm like, it's nice to have someone to work for you that does that, my guys, they tease me. They're like, she ain't coming in before 9 a.m., you know that. And I'm like, what? No, I have kids. Like, I got to get them to get ready. That's like 2 hours. So I think that's definitely one of those things that I see them as people, like they're going to make mistakes. So those of you who have hired, will hire, anybody that has ever had a past, trust and believe that they're going to mess up. And be ready for that consequence, and be ready for how you're going to address it, and assume any responsibility that you had in that, because everybody needs accountability, and that's why we need to put cameras up. We need to do certain things. You can't just leave money laying around, like he said. Like, I'm not going to just send someone that I know has a certain record to be around kids or whatever the situation calls. Sometimes there is success stories out of that, and I'm surprised that no drugs ever got taken anywhere. So, but I definitely believe that God does do miracles, and we see it every day. And it's really great to be able to have the team we have, and they're like family to us. So when they mess up, it hurts, so you're like, dang, if I didn't care about you this much, you'd so be fired. It is hard, but like they said, that loyalty that you feel, that connection, that drive that you see, that they want to prove themselves, they want to be a part of this community, they want to give. It is very awesome to watch and to see that grow. And I don't know, I think I talked a lot, so.
That's all right.
I also want to add real quick, more than a job, more than a paycheck, I feel like sometimes that people in the recovery community need someone to speak life into them. A lot of times they don't have that support system, and I have to brag on my husband for a minute, because he pulls out the life in these guys, and you have to be prepared for when they're not feeling so good about themselves, to see their work decline, and as they start that downward spiral, in come all of these old habits that they used to use to cope with these downward spiral feelings, until someone can come in, a daddy voice, and say, no, this is not who you are. We're going this way. Come on, let's go. So if you yourself can't, we're busy business owners, you don't have time or whatever, I would think it might be smart to find someone to say, hey, take them under your wing. Speak life into them. They have to know who they are. And that just takes time. It takes relationship building. It's more than a hi in the hallway, here's your paycheck. It's true relationship building. I can't tell you how many people that actually have burned us and have left the company and have come back to sit in his office because they need a talk from a male figure to pull them out of a slump. I can't tell you how many times I see someone's car in the driveway and I'm like, or in the parking lot, I'm like, well, what are they doing here? And they're sitting in his office and they're praying together. And it's that relationship building is so very, very important.
All right, well, we have quite a bit of time left, so we'll take some questions from the audience. I do have one thing while you guys are thinking about questions. That way it's not just a long, dead silence when nobody's brave enough to ask a question. You guys get your questions ready. We heard from Chris and Rick how they were in recovery and they built a business. What advice would you guys give someone who's wanting to build their own business as opposed to go work for somebody else?
Pay your taxes. I was lucky to have had some accounting, and I'd gone to school for some accounting, associate's degree, and so I knew how to work on computers and everything. But starting a business, you really have to put everything you've got back into it for the first 3 to 5 years. I mean, you can't. We worked 2 jobs. For the first 3.5 years, Richard worked over 5 years running the 180 and also working for SSI and disability judges. And we would travel, 2 weeks a month usually. And so, because the 180 house was not able to support us at the time. It was a calling, from God to do this. And so we had to find other ways to support ourselves. And so what we did was we were in such debt when we got, because we had to build it on credit, that I would switch credit card companies every 6 months to have 0% interest. And then I would pay. So I got ourselves out of debt, and then we were able to start working with cash. So, and it was a lot of hard work to do that. So, but I know that you pay your dues to the people like Caesar, or they will come in and take your business. And so you will lose everything you own, including your home. But mainly, we just reinvested into our businesses, especially into our rental businesses. We try to budget our loans and stuff 5 to 10 years to pay off our houses, and just really get down and pay on that instead of taking money out of it. So, do you have any suggestions?
I put number 1, identify the need. Is there a really need out there that's not being fulfilled? Do you have the skills that match that need? Number 3, would it be enjoyable? I'm very blessed in what I do. I love working with people in recovery. I love rebuilding old houses. How much better could I have it? When the people in recovery get on my nerves too bad, all I've got to do is run over to an old empty house and go to work and get away from them for a while. So, anyway, and ultimately it comes down to commitment, the willingness to carry through with the decision long after the mood in which you made it is gone. Because if you're starting up a business, I promise you're going to wake up one day and say, oh no, to heck with this. Commitment truly is like a ham and egg breakfast. The chicken's very involved in the process, but it's the pig that's committed to it. That's his ass in the skillet, right? Thank you.
So the question was what advice we would give someone if they're wanting to work for themselves, start their own business. Well, I guess like with this company, my husband's always been the dreamer, the vision, and he calls me the shotgun. So I'm always shooting down his dreams. Yeah. And so we're here because both of our efforts, and I think that but mostly because he had a dream, he had a vision. He always wanted to do his own thing. Worked for the man for a long time, and so he has something to say about that question.
Yeah, and for me, it was something I could say like I want to do an event planning. I mean, an event company, and I'm like, okay, like the education it took me to get to that point. I mean, continuous education is very important. I'm always learning. I'm still learning. It's like I was telling him, I'm horrible at public speaking. Like, you want me to speak? But I know that what it involves in our business and what we do, I think that's a very important thing to get out there to the community. And our goal is to make make Abilene a better place, our community a better place. So my heart's very heavy on that's why we hire the people that we hire, just because I feel it in my heart that that's what we need. That's what probably God called us in this, and gave us this business to do. So it's very important.
Yeah, he always, I'll be washing dishes and he comes up to me and he's like, he literally reads probably like 40 hours a week on audiobooks. Okay, so he's on the road a lot, and so it can get really frustrating because I'll be washing dishes and he comes into the kitchen. He's like, babe, we've been doing it all wrong. So you don't need to read anymore. Just get on those audiobooks, man. Like he probably did about 8 hours of audiobooks on public speaking this last week. So you guys, like, he has grown so much, and thanks to technology now, I mean, you could just listen to those audiobooks, and that's a huge part, I think.
I would say that one of the biggest things of having a business and starting a business is like Mr. Gregory was saying earlier, when you're just starting and you sitting in that chair waiting for the customers to come in, you don't close your door just because people aren't calling. If you say you're open, you be open. I liked that. That was great what you said. And just know what it is that you're going to do. Have a plan and stick to it. But don't be afraid to roll with the punches, because you're always going to get, people are always going to throw things at you that you don't expect. You got to always be able to just overcome and adapt to what's being thrown at you.
It's hard. You're going to work a lot. There's a lot of sacrifice. I'm sure everyone in this room knows that. It's a roller coaster, and I had to learn to get off the ride. Especially in the beginning, where our office was a desk in our bedroom, and I sat there all day long. And I'd get a phone call and feel like, okay, this thing might actually work. We're going to be, this is going great. And then an hour later, I'd get another phone call, and I didn't know how we were going to be open the next day. And it was days and days and days of that, weeks and months of that. That roller coaster is not a daily peak and valley now. It is a very frequent peak and valley, but I had to learn to control my emotions and to get off the ride, because that's just the part of business. You're going to go up, you're going to go down, but every time you're going to go down, there's going to be another up. So I just encourage you with that.
All right, so who has a question?
In dealing with the employees, do you find yourself being proactive or reactive in handling the situation that comes, the unexpected situation that come in upon the company?
So the question was, do you find yourself being proactive or reactive to the situations that come up when you're employed with your employees?
I feel like we are probably 50-50 on that. Yeah. I mean, sometimes we're proactive and we can see things coming, and other times it hits you like a ton of bricks. So.
Yeah.
Being as close to recovery as what we are, one of my deals is I haven't seen you in a meeting lately or whatever. This is our insurance policy and all that. We know as long as people are plugged in, if they're going to see Dr. Rob on Sundays and Wednesdays, if they're doing the things they need to do to keep their spirituality maintained and the rest of their life maintained, then, we're not near as likely to have those problems. But we have to be proactive when we don't see that. But, the main thing is to learn not to run away from it. If a problem does happen, you have to react to it. It's not going to fix itself, and it's not going to get better if we don't take actions,
Yeah, I handle everything with blunt honesty. I feel like that's been the best way to deal with things myself. It hurts, but especially I feel like in the recovery community, you can't accept excuses. You tell them that it's an excuse. And if that's what it is, then that's what it is. I can be reactive if, it hasn't been a good day or what kind of thing happened. I mean, we have thousands of dollars in these equipments, and they're like, well, I just broke it, and I'm like, what? So I'm gonna react, so I might say something like, that's coming out of your paycheck, but I'm not gonna do that. I have to really think about it, and I have to be like, okay, no decisions for the next hour for me. I'm gonna step back and let my husband take over. Seriously though. So yeah.
Chris?
I was just curious about this. Do you think when you give people a chance that it actually puts you on a different footing with them than with just somebody that comes in with the needed skills and not the baggage?
So the question was, do you feel like, I have to get this right, do you feel like when you give someone a chance, does that change the dynamic as opposed to someone you're just giving a job to because they have the skills?
I feel like there's been several guys who have felt like, I just had one recently. He was here from North Carolina, and he was at the 180 house, and he's like, I'm gonna stay forever. I said, man, if your family's back there, you can't not go back if that's what you're called to do. All I did was give you a job, and you worked for me. I appreciate everything you've done, but there's lots of times where they feel like they almost an over amount of, I can't leave now. Well, and I had to explain to him, no man, you're good. You can. This was just a job, and I love you, but don't feel as though you owe me something because I gave you a job. I don't know if that really answers your question.
Yeah,
but
can you repeat the question?
I'm not going to try again because I obviously didn't do it. What was it, Chris?
I'm just basically wondering that, you have this interview, this discussion with people in recovery or whatever, and you're giving them the chance, if that puts you on a different kind of footing or relationships just in the beginning to start with them than it would just say anyone else that just come through the door with a set of skills.
No, we've hired both. We've hired people that have really good skills and that we know of, no background. I do run background checks. I don't find anything. There could be, but I expect the exact same thing from them as I do from the other people. Some of them don't even show up, and they're
so
like...
do you feel like they feel differently toward you if they've been in recovery and you're giving them a chance than someone who you just gave a job to?
I honestly would expect them to both feel the same way. I mean, I'm giving you a job. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I would think that the expectations are the same. And I would hope that they would feel the same way either way, be grateful. But, I mean, I do feel like sometimes that some people that do have better skills or whatever, they may feel like this is just a job, this is just temporary. And my husband, I think he's big on like, you do what you feel is best for your life, and I'm going to help you wherever that is. And each person is different, and each person has different situation. I mean, one of our guys, he wants to leave to the military, and like, okay, and then one of our other guys, or two of our other guys, they see themselves growing with the company and being managers, and we're like, we'll support that as well. While you're here, we're going to help you whichever way we can. Whether you, I expect both of you to have skills. That's why I got you hired. So I hope that answered your question. Maybe.
So the loyalty is high because it came to you, and rather than just leave, it came to you and said, "This is what we're thinking about transitioning to." So that's an indicator that the loyalty is high because you did give them that second chance.
I think Eric touched on it real well earlier on. He talked about that 6-month period when, that gratitude is forefront or whatever, just for somebody to give me a chance. But I think that has to be renewed. We're a group of people who overall have a better forgetter than we do a rememberer, is the truth about it. And it always reminds me of the guy. They said, "How long have you been working here?" And he said, "Ever since they threatened to fire me."
Yeah, it's going to be 1:30.
I think we have about time for one more question. Does anybody?
I have one.
Yeah.
As couples in business, how do you balance the power struggle at home?
Ron, reiterate.
That could be difficult.
So as couples in business, how do you balance the power struggles at home?
She's El Presidente. I said, she's El Presidente. I just leave it at that.
Being married and having a business together is amazing and wonderful, and it presents challenges. I feel like our marriage sometimes is in a microscope. We've got 36 employees and everyone is staring at us, and the way we're married at home is the way we're married at work. There's no real change. He is the boss. He is the boss at work. He is the leader of our family at home. Where we come into problems is my role in the business is the finances, and his role in the business is to spend the money. So I'm like, no, you can't do that. He's like, well, we're gonna, so we got to figure it out. But it took a while for us to learn how to really communicate in those roles, so we both can complete the job that we need to complete. It takes a little bit, but we're getting there.
I say communication has been key to our success, that and God. We don't see much of each other during the day. I mean, because he's doing what he does and I do what I'm doing. The only thing is when it carries over at home, because we disagree on, or I disagree with him on some issues or something. So, but he is the person, he is the 180, he's the personality that makes the, helps the people. And I guess he'll tell other people that I'm the boss. I'm not the boss. I just take care of the finances. So, I don't know.
And once again, she's the saver, I'm the spender.
Yeah.
But if I'm spending money, it's usually on tools or something that we need to get the job done. Yeah, it's helped. At first, she's got a very nice separate administrative office that's out of the mix, and she resented that for a long time. But now she's finally figured out she'd never get what she needs done with the 100 people walking in her office door every day saying, "I just got one question for you."
Just need 5 minutes.
Yeah, all day long. So, but it's been a blessing. We've been married 22 years, and we've worked together. I've always worked for somebody else. My dad was an entrepreneur, so I grew up in a family that him and my stepmother worked together. So it was not foreign to me. So anyway.
I think communication was key for us. At first, it was pretty much zero communication. We argued a lot about what decisions, because I'm the spender myself and she's the saver. And so she'd be like, "I want to get this. I want to get this. This will make our job a lot better if we get this." And she'd be like, she'll get that shotgun out again and just shoot it down. She does. I give it to her. She does a lot of the finances and the taxes, and she tries to do it all. And so like to separate work and kids, and it was a very difficult thing, because we'll be at 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, we're still working on stuff, and I'm like, I wake up and it's 3 in the morning and she's still doing stuff, and I'm like, go to bed. You need to cut it off at some point. But getting over those little things where we separate, work from, our relationship, our kids, and our family, I think that was a big key. And once we started getting that and putting that into practice, it changed a lot of, I think this business and everything that we've done is drawn us closer. We've always been big prayer believers. We pray, and we pray about everything. Every event that we do, we say a prayer, and we say, like, may, God bless us and this event go great. And so we, I think that's, what, you got anything else?
Yeah, I used to not embrace the fact that we're polar opposites. So now I do. I mean, I'm literally the saver. He's the spender. He's the extrovert. I'm the introvert. He's the dreamer. I'm the realist. He loves people. I tolerate people. I mean, it's so hard. But when we learn to embrace all those differences, it was like we were trucking along and nothing could stop us. It was awesome. Yeah.
That's good.
Very good stuff.
Can I add one more? Because they just answered something really, they all three answered the same thing, and I was taught something totally different. Why don't you all let your girls handle money?
And I think I'm going to take the better part of Alex and turn me back to money.
What was his question?
Why do you let girls handle money?
I would like to answer that.
Okay.
Because if not, we wouldn't have money.
I was taught to our female friends, so we throw the responsibility on them. That is our responsibility as men.
Well,
Delegation.
they'll be more than happy to answer those questions offline, but I want to respect everybody's time and get us out of here. So let me give them a round. Let's all give them a round of applause. And Mike.
We're polar opposites also. Totally.
I just ran out. You guys, honey, baby.
Just stay put for just a minute. I'm gonna ask Bishop Rob just to kind of summarize briefly some of the things that he heard today, and then we'll get out here. And thank you so much for being here today. And like I said, we meet every Monday for lunch for an hour, but we'll be here the second Monday of the month at Potter's Pizza. So Bishop Rob, can you kind of close us out and kind of summarize what you've heard?
Sure. Business is risky. Hiring people in recovery is risky. Business is rewarding. Hiring people in recovery can be rewarding. People are people.
All right. That's it?
Yeah, that's it.
Once again, thanks everybody. If you got time and you want to hang out and ask questions or any of the folks, thanks for spending